I've talked a lot in the past about legislative findings and declarations and legislative intent statements. There are both similarities and differences between these two types of statements contained in California legislation. Now, both of these types of statements are made by the California Legislature, but in my opinion, they should be set forth in different sections of a bill regardless of whether one or both sets of statements are codified or uncodified. In my view, legislative findings and declarations usually set forth a factual basis or a purpose for the proposed legislation, while statements of legislative intent simply set forth the intent of the legislature. In some legislation that reached Governor Newsom's desk at the end of the 2023 California legislative session, I noticed that they are beginning more and more to combine the two into one section. So, in an example I recently saw, it would provide uncodified language that includes both findings and declarations as well as intent statements in the same bill section. So, in this particular one, in section one, it would be uncodified language, and subdivisions A through F are the findings and declarations, and then subdivisions G through I are the legislative intent statements. So, what's wrong with this? Well, in my opinion, findings and declarations and legislative intent are two entirely separate and distinct statements made by the California legislature. And so, as a result, I think they should be set forth in their own individual sections of a bill. In other words, they should not be combined into one single same bill section. Another reason for these two types of statements to be separate sections of a bill is because it seems strange to me that legislative intent statements would be preferenced with the statement the legislature finds and declares the following. The legislature doesn't find and declare its own intent. The institution simply states that it is the intent of the legislature to do something. So, legislative intent statements should not be contained in the same bill section as the findings and declarations. Now, there are other examples from the 2023 California legislative session of bills reaching the governor's desk where, in my opinion, it's the better approach being taken. So, in another example, I found in section one of the bill, it contains three uncodified legislative findings and declarations. And then in section two of the bill, it contains two codified legislative intent statements. And so I think that this example is definitely the better approach because you're setting forth these two different types of legislative statements in a bill in two separate bill sections. So again, the first section is the findings and declarations, which I think should come first, be contained in section one of the bill because they provide the basis for the bill's provisions and are a precursor for the intent statements. And then the second section of the bill should be for the legislative intent statements. And I think this should come second. Again, it should be contained in section two of the bill because the intent statements provide the statements of what the legislature is intending for you then to read the remainder of the bill. And so, again, those statements, I think, of intent appropriately follow the findings that are contained in the bill. But for those reasons, I think that intent statements and findings and declaration statements should be in two different sections of a particular